anti-Semitic and caustic, and they're creating civil war.
They want to create a civil war. Steve Bannon wants a civil war.
100%. It's disgusting.
Okay.
And you wanted to talk about gun control? Get rid of these assault weapons.
So that was plutocrat. That was plutocrat Stephen Klubeck. Stephen Klubeck, who is essentially, you know, give him credit. He is an honest spokesperson for the oligarchy. So while the rest of the oligarchy, while the rest of the rich, while the rest of the Democratic donors and plutocrats pretend that the biggest threat in the United States of America is the Russian boogeyman, and they try to deflect away from the real message of the 2016 election of Donald Trump, more importantly, the 2016 defeat of Hillary Clinton, Stephen Klubeck just comes out and says it. Hey, what did he say? Keep it simple. Tax reform. No bumps in the road. What else do we have to say? I mean, is that not an amazing slogan for the Democratic Party of the last 30 years? What else do we have to say? He says he basically is speaking for the rest of the donor class that has bought off the Democratic Party for the last 30 years. And by buying off the Democratic Party, they essentially allowed extremist right-wing Republicans to get a whole lot of toxic shit passed. By buying off the Democratic Party, they were able to basically put a Republican in office in Bill Clinton that didn't call himself a Republican, but sure as hell legislated as a Republican, passing media deregulation, repealing Glass-Steagall, deregulating the big banks, the crime bill, welfare reform. I mean, you name it, Bill Clinton did it. Stuff that Ronald Reagan, as my friend Jimmy Dore always says, stuff that Ronald Reagan could only dream of passing. I think that Bernie Sanders, in his second presidential run, and I'm not a political strategist, I'm a journalist, but here's my analysis, okay? I think 2016 woke a lot of people up. I think 2016 woke a lot of people up to the fact that the real people running this country are not Donald Trump. The real people running this country are not Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell. It wasn't Paul Ryan. The real people running the country are people like that, Stephen Klubeck. The real people running the country are the Koch brothers. The real people running the country are, you know, Tom Steyer and George Soros and the Wall Street executives and the fossil fuel executives and companies and the big pharmaceutical companies and real estate developers and Silicon Valley. That's it. So Bernie Sanders, who woke a lot of people up to the fact that this country is essentially an oligarchy, what he has to do is expose the fact that Donald Trump is part of that oligarchy. He might be giving you sweet chin music. He might be giving you that sweet talk about, you know, taking it to the banks, bringing your jobs back, reopening those closed down plants. Where are the mass openings of new plants in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin? Huh? Where? Is there suddenly a huge influx of new jobs in America in closed down factory towns where Trump said he was going to give you those jobs? I don't think so. There's another clip that I think is very, very important to show you when it comes to Bernie Sanders, and I would love to see him spark this message. I would love to see him push this message in a second presidential campaign. This is something he said in 2016, speaking with that douchebag, excuse my French, Chris Matthews.
And I'll tell you, this is what the campaign is about. I know it's outside of mainstream thinking. Are you ready for this one, Chris?
Yes.
All right.
I think I can take it.
All right, take it. I don't want anyone collapsing on me here. It is to revitalize American democracy on issue after issue. And it's not just Republican obstructionism on this issue. You have a Congress that does the bidding of the billionaire class, of the campaign donors. You know, you're there all the time. Half the members of Congress are spending their life raising money, right? And it's getting worse and worse and worse. So this is what you got to do. What you need to do is rally the American people. I'll give you an example. Raising the minimum wage. Overwhelming support for raising the minimum wage. Congress does not want to do it. Pay equity for women workers. Congress does not want to do it.
Obama can't do this, but you can. How?
I'll tell you. Well, I don't. What you need, and what I say is you need a political revolution. And that is you need these young people to understand, and working people and low-income people, if they are not involved actively in the political process, it will be the billionaire class who makes decisions for them and not necessarily in their interest.
But you get elected. Let's say you get elected. You take office next January 20th, and you walk up to the Senate and you meet with the leadership and say, I have a program here. I want to have free, government-funded tuition for public universities. There are things I want done on Social Security to increase benefits. There's things I want done on health care, so it can become like Medicare for life. You've got very strong positions. Right. And Mitch McConnell looks at you the way he looked at President Obama and says, forget about it.
And then you know what I say? I say, hey, Mitch, take a look out the window. There are 1 million young people out there who don't want to be in debt for half their life for the crime of going to college. And if you want to antagonize those 1 million people and lose your job, Mitch, if you don't want to lose your job, you better start listening to what we have to say. That's the point. That's how change takes place.
Well, how do you squeeze a guy like him?
It's not him. Mitch is, I know
all
Mitch
the Republicans.
McConnell.
How do you squeeze them? 60 senators. You need 60 senators to get a court. You need 60.
Let me tell you this. Absolutely, positively, 100%. If we rally young people in this country to say, you know what? Germany, Scandinavia, other countries, they have free tuition in public colleges and universities. I have been all over this country because I've talked to kids $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 in debt, paying a huge percentage of their income, okay? Young people stand up and say, we are sick and tired of it. We don't want to go in debt for our whole lives because we got a college education. You know what? We'll win that fight immediately. But the trick is not to appeal to Mitch McConnell. It's to say, Mitch, take a look at your emails coming into your
What
office.
evidence do you have that this has worked for you? Have you increased the turnout in these elections?
Have you, as a senator, been able to get 60 votes of senators for anything? Have you ever been able to do this? What you're talking about doing? You say I can get 60 senators. I am not the president of the.
Okay.
What I am saying, Chris.
But what evidence do you have you can do it?
What evidence do I have? The evidence that I have is that's the only way change has ever happened
I agree with you.
in this country.
That's
what the civil rights movement was about. That's what the women's movement, the gay movement.
Well, let me give Chris Matthews the evidence that Bernie could do it, huh? So Bernie ran in 2016. He was the first candidate in my lifetime that I've heard aggressively talking about Medicare for all. He was the first candidate that I've heard in my lifetime talking about free public college. He was the first candidate in my lifetime that I've heard really pushing a living wage of $15 an hour, which frankly, $15 an hour isn't even enough, but it's a start. We got to get the minimum wage up to $15 an hour. Well, that was in 2016. Well, take a look at the polls. Take a look at the polls now in America. Obviously, Congress doesn't give a shit because they don't work for the American people. But look at the polls. People who want Medicare for all. That would be 70% of Americans support Medicare for all. 52% of Republicans support Medicare for all. 85% of the Democrats support Medicare for all. Well, you think that was because of Nancy Pelosi? Hillary Clinton? No, that's Bernie Sanders organizing the grassroots. Free college tuition. 79% of Democrats want free college tuition. 41% of Republicans support free college tuition. 60% total support free college tuition. Abolishing ICE. 43%. It's a lot higher than it used to be, folks. 32%. Forget abolishing ICE. That's not a good example. New poll yesterday. A majority of Americans support increasing the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. This is a Hill Harris X poll. Found that 55% of registered voters said they would support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Another 27% said it should be increased, but to a lesser amount. 14% of respondents said the minimum wage should be kept at $7.25, and 5% said the wage floor should be reduced or eliminated. Congressman Bobby Scott and Senator Bernie Sanders this month introduced legislation that would gradually increase the amount to $15 by 2024. I think that's too far a process. I think it should be increased immediately, but it's a start. So all of these things, $15 an hour, obviously there's been a fight for 15 for a very long time. But Bernie Sanders has shifted the political needle in this country simply by speaking up for the working class of America. And it's not just that. I mean, look at these other polls. You got 58% want $15 minimum wage. 72% want to expand Social Security. 57% break up the big banks. 64% legalize marijuana. 65% want a jobs guarantee. So what Bernie was saying to that shill, Chris Matthews, you have all the polls I just showed you. You also have, if you want to look at the grassroots, Bernie tops progressive straw poll. This is recent, in December. Senator Sanders tops the 2020 straw poll by the Progressive Political Action Committee, Democracy for America, by a wide margin, followed by Vice President Joe Biden and Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Senator Elizabeth Warren, meanwhile, has seen her stock slide among the group's members, according to the poll released Tuesday and obtained first by Politico. The Massachusetts Democrat, whose success is similar polling 4 years ago, propelled Democracy for America to help organize a massive but ultimately unsuccessful effort to draft her into the 2016 presidential campaign, was running fourth. The straw poll is more significant as a sign of organizational support than as a measure of public opinion. So you got Bernie Sanders leading Democratic straw polls. I could overwhelm you with polls here. Bernie Gallup, this is in September of 2018. Favorability. Bernie has a 54% favorability among independents. You know how you win general elections? Not just by galvanizing the base, not just by picking off some on the other side. You have to win independents. Bernie has a 54% approval rating among independent voters. Independents win presidential elections. That's the way it is. 78% among Democrats. 64% among non-white voters. That is key. He did not do so great in 2016 among older non-white voters. He did do well among millennial African Americans and millennial Latinos. He actually beat Hillary Clinton among millennial African Americans and Latinos. It was the older crowd. Well, 64% of non-whites. I don't know what the age breakdown is, but that's a good number. 64% of non-whites incorporates older minorities and younger minorities. And to me, one of the key numbers in this Gallup favorability poll, 55 and older. 55 and older. That is predominantly the people who voted for Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary. Now, there's a hell of a lot of older Bernie Sanders voters. There's older people who watch Status Quo and other progressive media. So this isn't an ageist thing, but by the numbers, Hillary Clinton's best demographic was 55 and older. That's just the data. So the fact that he's even close to 50% among age 55 and older is a damn good thing. Another poll that I think is super, super important has nothing to do with Bernie Sanders, but public sentiment. That same Gallup poll. Look at the views about capitalism versus socialism. Okay? In 2010, Democrats viewed them about the same. 53% had a positive view of capitalism, 53% positive view of socialism. 55%, so in 2012, capitalism better than socialism. 2016, 56% capitalism, 58% socialism. So in 2016, that was the first time socialism grew to more favorable than capitalism. Look at it now. Look how far capitalism has fallen among the American people. As far as the Democratic Party. You ain't going to see this poll on CNN, that's for sure. 47% want favorable of capitalism, 57% favorable of socialism. You don't think that has something to do with Bernie Sanders? I can tell you it has nothing to do with Kamala Harris, that's for sure. Or Beto O'Rourke. This is Bernie among Democrats, plus favorability rate, plus 77 among Democrats. Independents, plus 41. And by the way, independents, Bernie Sanders, way, way more popular among independents than President Trump. This one's from 2017. So he's only gotten more popular among independents since 2017. And Bernie Sanders is the least toxic Democrat among Republicans. So whenever you hear all these Neera Tanden, Correct the Record, David Brock, idiots, Bernie is going to re-elect Trump, Bernie shouldn't run, Bernie Sanders, he's old, Bernie Sanders, he's toxic, Bernie Sanders, now you're hearing, well, he was the only one to vote to lift the sanctions on Russia. What do the Russians have on Bernie Sanders? I mean, you're literally starting to hear this. Hit them over the head with facts and data. And as I've learned, don't waste your breath. Don't waste your breath with these people because they're not political activists. They're not civic-minded people that care about their country. They are Democratic Party business industry operatives. That's what Neera Tanden is. That's what David Brock is. That's frankly what CNN is. That's what MSNBC is. Wasn't always that way, but it is now.